Tari Eason is playing like the defensive player of the year for the Houston Rockets, and he's doing it off of the bench. Has not started a game yet this season for Houston. He is not playing a ton of minutes, not nearly the same number of minutes as some other players in the conversation presently for the Defensive Player of the Year award and all defense team membership, but his impact has been enormous, especially for the amount of minutes he's been playing. He just feels like he's all over the court for the Houston Rockets defensively right now, and Ime Udoka has this dream bench unit with both Amen Thompson and Tari Eason coming off of the bench and just mucking the game up for other teams. It feels like they are just a SWAT unit coming in and shutting down whatever's going on the court. Not only is Dillon Brooks playing extremely well defensively in my estimation right now for the Rockets, but with Tari Eason specifically, who this video centers on, he has been otherworldly in a ton of different ways. He's been toward the top of the league in total stocks. For those of you who do not know what a stock is, that is the combination of steals and blocks. He's also one of the highest rankers in deflections this year. And again, I prefaced earlier, he's not playing nearly the same number of minutes as some of the other DPOY candidates this season, which is what makes him such an anomaly. And when we look at his actual stocks numbers, he ranks number 1 in the NBA at the time I'm recording this video in steals per 36 minutes with 3.4 steals per 36 minutes. If you compare that to Dyson Daniels, he's actually outperforming Dyson Daniels, and that has been one of the main talking points nationally this year. How Dyson Daniels has been just pickpocketing, thieving teams of the basketball, and he's actually getting outperformed by Tari Eason on a per-minute basis right now. Not only is Tari Eason mucking the game up in a bunch of different ways in the passing lanes, he's also blocking the basketball at the rim, out on the perimeter a ton as well, leading the Houston Rockets in blocks per 36 minutes with nearly 2 blocks per 36 minutes, which goes to show his functionality. I think a clip right now that you're seeing on the screen is a great example of this as well. Initially on Nikola Vucevic, hedges onto Ayo Dosunmu in the pick and roll, then gets back to Vucevic's body to break up the play. Let's take another look at this one here. Again, just very high-level defensive play, making winning plays at the right time for the Houston Rockets. He has been incredibly impressive, and he's also getting involved on the glass. If you go back to some of my analysis on Tari Eason when he was coming out of LSU, early in the process, I'll admit, I was a little lukewarm on him because a lot of what stood out to me offensively when I was evaluating him as an offensive prospect was the fact that he was semi-reliant on his athleticism to create production. And that production was extremely immense. If you go back to a lot of my analysis, again, early in the process, I had highlighted how productive he was and how the athleticism, I thought, led to a lot of that productivity. The crazy thing about that, by the end of the process, I started to really warm up on him. In fact, gave the Rockets, I believe, an A or an A+ grade on draft night when they selected him 17th overall. And a big reason for why I turned around on him, especially as the process went on and as I was able to watch more and more film on Tari Eason by the end of the draft cycle, I fell in love with who he was as a player because of how he utilized that athleticism to become a functional tool. And if you watch some of these clips here that I'm showing you on the screen now, a lot of this just stems from his athleticism. Look at him here in this situation, removing Victor Wembanyama from the paint, rotating over as a weak side shot blocker. He just is all over the court watching his rotations. He just has this great timeliness to him. And one thing that has really kind of transpired for me in my own draft evaluation over the last couple of years is the valuing of production when there's also the athletic tools. And it kind of paints a picture of how athletic some of these players are. Part of what led me to love Amen Thompson in his own draft class. And Tari Eason, I think, was really a forefront member of this for me in changing my draft philosophy and also just opening my eyes to how athleticism allows players to make different kinds of plays. Even on a play like this where Victor Wembanyama maybe gets the better of him early in a possession, the ability, the speed, the foot quickness, and lateral mobility to recover in a number of ways. And then he's also extremely strong, and you see that in a number of these clips as well, where he's fighting for position. He has become one of the best gap defenders in the entire NBA. And what I mean by that is when he is off the basketball defending a player without the ball, his ability to kind of collide into the gaps, fill in driving lanes, just like this one here where he dives at the basketball and ultimately forces a turnover. Plays like these are starting to become the regular for Tari Eason, and it's very different compared to what you see around the NBA right now. Obviously, you think about nail help, you think about weak side rotations. There's every single team's trying to make plays like that, right? But Tari Eason is kind of in a world of his own when it comes to actually forcing turnovers and really mucking up offensive sets, offensive plays. And I think one thing that really separates him for me as well is the ability to extend his ball pressure out to the perimeter when he is defending on the basketball. And for me, when we're talking about a player who is able to defend on the perimeter the way that he is, the ability to utilize his length, size, and athleticism, you're talking about a 6'8"-ish wing with a 7-foot+ wingspan who jumps out of the gym and is very functionally strong. The switchability has been unreal this year for Houston, and again, the timeliness of his plays as well. Just the IQ understanding and trusting his athleticism as well to go in and make plays. There's a great example of him getting into the gaps, playing as a nail help guy. Here's another weak side rotation, and then with him playing in as a help side shot blocker is just impressive. When you turn on the Tari Eason film, there's just so much to be enamored with. Again, this is a great example here of the functional strength. He actually fronts Giannis successfully and still has the athleticism to get in front. Functional strength here, playing Vucevic off the spot. We've talked about this clip already. He's just such an impressive player in more ways than one defensively, with the functionality of being able to honestly switch at times 1 through 5. You see him against Dallas guarding someone like Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving in spurts, guarding Klay Thompson at times. Saw him in already clips here defending big men like Nikola Vucevic, for example. You've seen him guarding James Harden. He's one of the few players who is capable of honestly switching across a number of different players, and also is very functional off the basketball. I think a counterpoint to Tari Eason, someone like Jaden McDaniels in Minnesota, who is another awesome on-ball defender, who has, I think, the upside to be a better weak side shot blocker. Minnesota hasn't really allowed him to do that a ton. And I think one of the things that makes Houston specifically so special with their core 7 is the flexibility to switch up their matchups, switch up who's defending who. So when Amen Thompson's in the game, you can elect to put him on the basketball, for example, rather than Tari Eason, which allows Eason to play as nail help, play as a weak side rotation guy. But if you do want a certain matchup, whether it's a bigger wing, maybe you want to put a little bit more length on him and size with Tari Eason, that is a possible avenue for you to go. If it's a smaller guard and you want to, again, show them that length and size, Tari Eason's there. If you want to match up with a bigger, stronger player, Tari Eason has been that answer for Ime Udoka as well. And it's not just about steals and blocks. For those of you who've been either following me on Twitter, by the way, links in the description, make sure to go follow me over there. You guys know that I have not been extremely impressed with Dyson Daniels. Now, it is very impressive what he is doing in terms of making plays off the basketball, getting his hand in the cookie jar, taking the ball away as a pickpocket. The Great Barrier Thief is such a sweet nickname. He's been impressive, but I'm not overly blown away by Dyson Daniels defensively for a few different reasons, and I think one of the biggest reasons is his actual effectiveness as a shot defender. And I'm not just talking about steals and blocks, which again, on a per minute basis, Tari Eason's the best in the NBA right now, so he's outperforming Dyson Daniels in that area. He's also dominating Dyson Daniels in the defensive metrics, and this is from NBA.com. Anyone can look at these metrics, anyone can find them. I have them presented here for you now. At the time I'm recording this, through 16 games of the season, which is a very good sample size, that's about 20% of the season, Tari Eason is dominating defensive metrics, holding his matchup to sub-league average efficiency across the board. You look at the overall differential, opponents are shooting 2.5% worse against Tari Eason than the league average. You look at three-point contests, they're shooting 3% worse than league average. You look at overall two-pointers, a little bit under 2% worse than league average. And then what really impresses me is when you look at the less than 6 feet and less than 10 feet categories, where he's contesting about 7 shots per, or a little bit under 6, maybe 5 shots per game in this category. If you look at the numbers here, he's holding opponents to about 5% worse shooting across the board within 6 and 10 feet of the hoop, compared to league average, which again shows the incredible versatility. He's not only winning on the three-point line, he's not only winning on long two-pointers, but he's been extremely dominant around the rim. And remember, that comes in the context of him being a weak side shot blocker. That comes in the context of him guarding some big men throughout the course of the season so far. And the versatility, the scheme switchability allows Houston to play in a number of different styles. We've seen him hedge and recover. We've seen him switch out onto the perimeter again, with him and Amen Thompson being two dynamic, dominant defensive pieces together. The switchability, the versatility in Houston is elite. They have a lot of length, size, and athleticism around Amen Thompson and Tari Eason. Obviously, we haven't even talked about Cam Whitmore quite yet, who hasn't been playing regular minutes this season. But there's also other pieces on this roster that get up off the floor pretty well too. So I think the overall culmination of length, size, and athleticism, something I've talked about at length for the Rockets in the past, has really stood out this year on the defensive side of the court. And the one thing that I think, you know, it doesn't factor into a DPOY race at all, but it's not that Tari Eason is just making a bunch of plays defensively, like you see here in this clip where, again, Alperen Şengün does a good job walling up Derrick Jones. Tari Eason comes over and gets the block. Tari Eason's also evolving and emerging as an offensive player as well, specifically with his all-around game. He's shooting over 52% from the field presently, shooting 37% on three-pointers as well, which is making him not only one of the most productive defensive players in the league on a per-minutes basis, it's also making him a very productive off-the-bench offensive player as well. And really, a part of the reason I'm recording this video is to, first of all, raise awareness with the type of season he's having, especially the fact that he comes off the bench for a team where a lot of the conversation around the Rockets, especially the last few years, has been centered around Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün. First of all, I think Tari Eason deserves a lot of love. I think he deserves a lot of credit and attention nationally for what he's doing on the defensive end of the floor. Now, if I had to bet, will he actually win Defensive Player of the Year? Probably not. The minutes per game just aren't there. But I do think at this point in time, if the season were to end today, he needs to be a serious option, a serious candidate based on the type of defensive numbers he's having, especially with the stocks per minute and the defensive metrics in terms of actual shots guarded. And with him evolving as an offensive player, you know, we talked about the Rockets core 7. Remember, I've talked at length about the Rockets maybe making a big trade at some point. Either a team is going to luckily land Tari Eason in a trade. If they do that, I would feel bad for Rockets fans. Or what will happen is the Rockets, if they have to trade out salary like a Dillon Brooks, for example, they have a player like Tari Eason laying in wait who is ready for a bigger role. And I think that is one thing that allows Houston a little bit more flexibility than other teams when it comes to trade discussion, the amount of depth, the amount of raw talent that they have, and the amount of players who they're going to have to pay. Tari Eason is one of the top candidates on that list, and he's going to garner a huge payday for good reason. He's an extremely impressive player, both on the defensive end of the floor and an emerging offensive player as well. A lot of that, again, stems from his athleticism, but he's one of the more athletic players in the league. We see that with the functionality of him defensively, switching up and down the lineup, guarding various different archetypes of players, and then also on the offensive end, kind of asserting himself, whether it be getting on the offensive glass, something he was great at as an LSU Tiger and still very good at in the NBA, or if it was, you know, in some other fashion, whether it's driving the basketball, playing in transition, getting to the rim frequently. He's just asserting himself in a ton of ways, and I just wanted to record this video to hype up Tari Eason in a lot of ways, raise awareness nationally for who he is as a player, share with my following how good of a player I think he's become this season, because it's been extremely impressive for me. You know, the flashes and signs were there over the last couple of years. I'm really happy that pre-draft I started to really warm up on him by the end of the cycle, because if I hadn't, I'd be really extremely disappointed in myself. So he's such a good player. I'm very, very happy that he's breaking out in the way that he is, and I think honestly Houston's going to be one of the teams to watch. I've already talked about this at length before, but if they make a big move, Tari Eason's the player who's going to slot into that starting lineup probably next to whatever player X, Y, or Z they acquire in a trade. So very excited for the Houston Rockets' future. I think Tari Eason really has a ton of potential to grow into yet, and can be an extremely impactful starter in the NBA if he ever is given that opportunity. And Houston, they have a lot of flexibility, so watch out for the Rockets. Hopefully you guys all did enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.